Welcome to Gemara Academy. This class will present an overview of the Gemara Masechta Shabbos on the Gimel Amud Beis, the Dalet Amud Aleph. Let's begin. The general outline of the Gemara is: we asked if Chazal made a person's hand that's extended into another rishus. A person picked up an item on Shabbos, extended it into another rishus. Did Chazal give his hand the status of a carmelist, that he shouldn't be able to bring it back or not? And we learned 8 taisvos on this piece of Gemara. Let's see now in the flowchart the various points that Taisvos brought out. So the first thing is we had the question of Abaya. Ma'u sheteyasek a carmelist. What do we say about making the person's hand into a carmelist? So in this we have a Taisvos that explains that this question is only in regards to our case, where the person lifted up an item, extended his hand outwards, and his desire is to bring it back to him. Then we have a question whether we make his hand a carmelist. However, in general, the fact that a person's hand is extended into another rishus, we don't think that for other situations would be considered a carmelist. And Taisvos gives an example over there. The next Taisvos also addresses this question of Abaya, which was Ma'u sheteyasek a carmelist. What do we say about making a person's hand into a carmelist? And Taisvos explains that there's 2 ways we could explain to make a person's hand into a carmelist. One is through making it asur, in isur, that the hand is now a carmelist, and one is that it's a knas. And that's also explained over there. Let's continue. The next Taisvos is on the first response that the Gemara gives, that although it seems that we presented 2 brises, one said asur lachzir, the person can bring his hand back, and one said mutar lachzir, is permitted to bring his hand back. Although it seems that what they're arguing about is the one that it says asur holds that it's a carmelist, therefore he can't bring his hand back. When it says mutar lachzir, it holds that it's not a carmelist, so he could bring his hand back. The Gemara gives a different way of learning it, which is that the one that says asur lachzir is referring to when it's below 10 tefachim, and therefore since his hand is a carmelist, he can't bring it back. And the other brisa also holds his hands a carmelist. However, since it's above 10 tefachim, which is a makam tur, he can bring it back. So over here, Taisvos explains why we need any teachings for above 10 tefachim if it's a makam tur and it's obvious. So Taisvos addresses that question: why would a brisa need to teach us this mutter if it's obvious? It's always mutter to carry from makam tur into Rosh Hashanah. The next Taisvos addresses when we explain the question of Rav Bibi bar Abaya. Do Chazal permit an individual who put bread into an oven, let's say by mistake, and then he realizes his mistake and he wants to remove it? Did they remove their isser, that we don't allow a person to take out bread from the oven, or in order that it shouldn't bake and come to an isser terah? Or do we leave the isser in place even though it'll lead the person to transgress an isser terah? So Taisvos presents the question that it seems that removing bread from the oven is not considered something which is asur on Shabbos, and explains why it is asur. The next Taisvos, back to the general flowchart, focuses on the third answer of the Gemara. Here the Gemara said it, that we can give a different explanation, that according to this one, we cannot have any information about Rav Bibi bar Abaya's question about removing bread from the oven, and we can't resolve it. So Taisvos presents over here 2 girsais, which according to one girsa, we could still resolve the question of Rav Bibi bar Abaya, and according to another girsa, we cannot anymore resolve the question of Rav Bibi bar Abaya, and Taisvos explains each one of these girsais. The next Taisvos came to explain also something on that interpretation of the 2 brises, which was that one brise, the brise that says asur lachzir, it's because the person extended his hand out but mazed, therefore we don't permit him to bring it back, we give him a knas. Another brise that says mutar lachzir is because the person extended his hand out but shegig, and therefore we don't give him a knas. Taisvos explains that this must be referring to that this all happened before Shabbos, because otherwise we would still be able to resolve the question of Rav Bibi bar Abaya. Again, this is also explained at length in Taisvos. The next Taisvos is on the last and final answer, which was that the brisa that says asur lachzir doesn't mean the person can't bring it back to himself, but rather he can't take it to another Rosh Hashanah. The one that says mutar lachzir is saying that it's permitted to bring it back to the Rosh Hashanah he's standing in. Over here, Taisvos addresses how could this interpretation fit into the words of the brisa. How do we now read the brisa asur lachzir? He can't bring it back. It's not referring that he can't bring it back to himself. It means he can't bring it to another Rosh Hashanah. So Taisvos addresses that. And the last and final Taisvos is on the question that Rav asked Rav Nachman, which was, what's the reason a person can't bring it to another Rosh Hashanah, but he could bring it to his own Rosh Hashanah? That's what Rav asked Rav Nachman. Why do we distinguish between those 2? And Taisvos addresses that the question doesn't seem to make any sense, because there's a tremendous difference between taking it to another Rosh Hashanah and their own Rosh Hashanah. Taking it to another Rosh Hashanah is asur on Torah. It's the isser of Moshe. The person is not allowed to pass from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah through a Rosh Hashanah if they're both on the same side of the street. So Taisvos explains what was Rav's question, what's the difference, if the difference is very great, very big. One is asur on Torah and the other one isn't. And that's the general overview of the Taisvos on our Sugya.